Welcome along to this another episode of the DePIN Coffee Hour. I'm your host, Neil Sisson from Havelo, and I'm broadcasting today from Paris. This is Paris Apartments behind me, where we are here for Paris Blockchain Week. So if there's anybody tuned in or anybody from your companies who are at Paris Blockchain Week, by all means, stop by and say hello. With me today is Daniel Keller from Flux. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, Neil, how are you this morning, buddy?
I'm great, thank you. It's the afternoon here. Where are you dialing in from?
I'm in the States.
All right, very good.
You didn't know that the entire world runs on the United States time?
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that.
I'm just totally kidding, man.
That's one of those urban legends I heard about.
Look at the artwork on the walls back there, man. That's insane. The U.S. mind, the U.S. mind can't comprehend that. We can't comprehend that. That's just too cool.
Yeah, this is a very nice place we have right in the center, not too far away from the Louvre. So, also joining us today is Keith from Kuala. Hey, Keith.
Yep. Hi guys. You all right?
Hey, Keith.
I'm coming in from Bangkok today. I did come over here for the Southeast Asia Blockchain Week, but it had a bit of disruption with the earthquake going on. Right. But thankfully, there's some of the side events and stuff are still going on. But
very good.
Still good.
Yeah, that was wild. I've seen a lot of videos of people in pools like scrambling to get out while there's a
rooftop pools too. The ones on the roof are crazy.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna go over the side of that.
Just missed it by a couple of days, but the guys here said it was pretty wild. So
yeah, I can imagine. And our last guest today is Cameron. Cameron,
hey guys, great to see everybody.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for turning up. Where are you dialing in, joining us from today?
Not quite as exciting as from where you guys are joining in. I'm based in New York right now.
Oh, okay. Plenty going on there all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I was in Paris though for the Blockchain Week.
Yeah, I have a very love-hate relationship with Paris actually. The expression you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, Paris didn't make a very good first impression on me the first time I was here, so it was just a long weekend of literally one disaster after another. So I think
that means it can only get better.
True, and I have to say it's beautiful and sunny here at the moment, which is quite unusual for April, I think, in Europe. So so it's definitely helps. So I suppose let's get into the chat about DePIN and crypto and Web3. I'll just go around in the same order that everybody joined. Daniel, do you want to tell us your origin story and what Flux is all about?
Yes, I am the old man of DePIN. I was doing DePIN before DePIN was cool. So Flux is the world's largest decentralized compute network. We've got about 13,000 plus nodes that run all over the place, 78 locations, countries globally, completely decentralized, proof of use of work project. So we use the proof of work algorithm for consensus mechanism, transactional validation, and we build on top of that our useful work model, which allows people to essentially mine any cryptocurrency they like, but participate in useful work, which is front ends, back ends, game servers, edge compute, you name it. So we kind of solve Satoshi's greatest quandary, and that is, what do I do with all this additional compute resources? Well, we put it to work, and we're looking like geniuses right now because there's no way to scale AI, and here we are. Right. So it worked out in the end.
Unless you're China. Apparently, China are scaling AI very well.
Well,
according to the All-In podcast, which I was listening to while I was driving to the airport last night.
It helps when you're the one that are illegally manufacturing the graphics cards. So yeah. I know this because I have some graphics cards from China. But they're scaling pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. When you were saying you're in DePIN before it was cool, our founder Dom always says that the earliest iteration of DePIN for him was SETI. I don't know if you're that old. I'm that old, by the way.
I've been in the game since 2011, so I've been very early on. So I've seen it come and go. but around 2017 is where we thought, hey, we started to see some nefarious stuff. The big players, the evil empire, as I refer to them, the Microsofts and Googles, the AWSs. Yeah, they were controlling everything, and we're like, hey, this is going to be a major issue, because if we want to talk about decentralization, if everyone's supporting infrastructure runs on AWS, Google, or Microsoft, we've got a major issue. So we said there's got to be a better way, and that's where Flux was born. So right now it's immutable. You can deploy without permission on Flux blockchain right now. You can run front ends, back ends, game servers, whatever you want, and it isn't some pie in the sky white paper to dream. It exists today. So our goal is to make all the projects out there that are DePIN, but running on AWS and Google and Microsoft, we're giving them the option to run on Flux, cheaper, better, faster, stronger, and decentralized. So, fundamentally, if you think of DePIN as a gold rush, because it is going to be a gold rush, it's the first practical use case we've ever had for blockchain, frankly. I mean, other than speculatory, Bitcoin, so on and so forth, speculatory assets, storage of wealth. And we're finally able to provide that to every single project out there and allow them to build on top of it.
Okay, so in terms of where you exist in the ecosystem of stuff, and again, I'm trying to, like, the point of this DePIN Coffee Hour is to make DePIN more accessible for sort of the average user, the average person who's not necessarily a developer, they're not necessarily a technical person. So I'm just trying to understand with Flux where you exist in terms of I suppose, who are your users' projects themselves that would build on your layer one? And
we are everything. So we'll do retail all the way up to enterprise. We have Flux Enterprise. We have a Flux AI, which is our AI agent, which is completely decentralized, does not harness or collect your data, harvest or collect your data. So, I mean, when you really get down to brass tacks, where do we fit? We are the baser layer that's going to make DePIN possible, like officially possible. If you're running a DePIN project and maybe you're, collecting data or garnering information or whatever it is, right? If you're storing it on a major provider, that's not really decentralized. So this gives us a baser layer to make every project decentralized at its heart.
Okay, so that's everything: storage, compute, GPUs, the whole range. I mean, if you're doing AI, you definitely,
if it's compute, you can do it on Flux. I mean, if you could put it in a Docker, or if you have Kubernetes on the enterprise side, no problem. We built this from the ground up, and exactly, Neil, what you said is we built a Web 2 user interface on Web 3. That's why it's taken us seven years to get to this point. Is because customers don't remember. Or customers will remember if they've come to use your project and it's not usable, or there's problems, or if the user UI UX is wonky, and that's where Flux excels. Is we're UI UX guys, and we're at our heart, we're compute technicians, and that's what we've built this for. Is for people, whether you're a mom and pop retailer that just wants to run a WordPress website and pay $4 to host it, done. If you're a mid-tier business that needs, DRP, disaster recovery protocols, continuity protocols, you need to meet HIPAA or PHI or something like that, we got you. That's what we're doing. We have Arcane, which is end-to-end encryption. So, yeah, I mean, we did the unsexy stuff, right? Yeah. So when Amazon was building out their platform, they had to build a compute network inside. That was the birth of AWS. And then when they were done, they said, you know what? We could take this compute resources and we could sell these. Now it's 45% of their profit every year. So what we did is we built a delivery framework for all these bright and shiny, sexy projects to be able to harvest and utilize that. And it's a framework. So it doesn't matter what you drop into it, DePIN, NFTs, DeFi, whatever the acronym de jour is, you can do it on Flux.
Very good. Okay. So yeah, it sounds like a lot of the messaging there sounds similar to what we're doing with Havelo, except that we're very much aimed at the rather than sort of being B2B, it's more B2C in the sense that, look, we're not looking for companies, we're looking for people. who just have a computer that they're not using, like, and they want to Airbnb the kind of the spare resources on that. So it'll be interesting to see if we can do something together in the future.
I was going to say, we need to talk. Yeah, we need to talk. See, that's why I love these, like, you know, kind of laid back coffee hour style stuff, as you start to learn about other projects and you're like, you know, I'm a firm believer there isn't competition in DePIN. There's only opportunity. So like
100%.
it isn't an arms race. It's actually a race to enable people to deploy. And if you don't believe that DePIN is absolutely essential, Elon Musk and Grok, ChatGPT, all of them down last weekend. Why? Because of Gillies or whatever they're called. People were making Gillies. If your infrastructure goes down like that and you can't scale appropriately, that's where Flux comes in as well. We're a wetland. Anybody can use this as additional resources. Very
good. Sorry, it sounded like half of the emergency services of Paris just run past. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that explanation. Was Flux where you started in crypto, or did you start your journey? I mean, obviously you mentioned.
Oh, I was a Bitcoin guy, so I got in very early into Bitcoin. You know, and I started mining. I actually built a mining facility. I had the largest GPU mining facility on the East Coast for several years. Was using nuclear power before it was cool. So we have a nuclear power plant called 3 Mile Island, which is not far from here. So we were getting transmission lines directly from them. And that was great. And I loved it. But I felt kind of like there has to be something more than this. And that's where I ended up meeting the co-founders of Flux. And we said, look, we got a major problem. We need to fix it. This is what we're going to do. So it's my baby. It's the only project I work on personally. And, you know, one of the rules, if you work on Flux, you don't work on another project. If we find you working on another project, you're going to have to go somewhere else. You have to dedicate your resources and your time, because there's too many of these, you know, shitcoin chasers out there that we don't want them on the team. We need visionaries. And all the people that are on our team are visionaries. Every single one of them believes, you know, for the people, by the people. And it's unfortunate what's happened to the blockchain and crypto space is, you know, the disruptors, which are us, the innovators, the ones that want to go out there, have been disrupted by legacy finance who come in and said, you know, we're going to make money on top of your backs. And all of a sudden, the attention has shifted to, how do I get rich quick? You know, and now we're finally to the point where we're burning those projects out, and we're starting to focus on real utility-based projects. 99% of crypto projects are going to fail. It's the 1% that's going to succeed because they have revenue generation. They've built a product on top of the blockchain. They're not crypto focused, and they're not speculatory. So the people that are investing are making money off their investment. So, i.e., people that run our nodes. And you're basically building this organic, self-contained, holistic product that you rely on nobody for. And that's the ones that are going to be successful.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you for that. I agree with most of that. Although I think we've all, well, maybe not we all, but a bunch of us have had dipped our toes, at least in I know I certainly have had back in 2017, dipped my toes. Well, actually, no, probably it was 2019, actually, now that I think of it, dipped my toes a little bit in the shitcoin space to just understand what was going on.
Neil, I was a shitcoiner of massive proportions. I would, if I could mine it, buy it, you know, run nodes on it, whatever, I was getting it. You know, and then and I'm like, get this. And like that, the whole master node craze came, like 1,000% return on investment, right? Or, you know, and like everyone else, I'm like, I'll dabble in it. I've never bought a meme coin, though. I will say that. So.
Yeah, well, that makes two of us. Although, well, actually, I did buy some Doge way back, but that was more when I saw Elon getting into it. And I just kind of bought a small amount just in case it becomes the currency of Mars, kind of thing, you know. Anyway, thank you for all that. Keith, do you want to tell us a little bit about your backstory and what you're up to at Qualu as well as a second part?
Yeah. So, I mean, our origin story kind of comes from Web2 telecom consultancy work, you know. So I was working with, as a consultant, usually brought in to do audits with telecom providers, regulators, whole countries. And really to try and find out why they're a mess, why they got so many faults, why they got so many customers going, why they got all these complaints and high OPEX. And, during that time, if you can only get so much information from analyzing these kind of churn stats and fault reports, and, they're all like 6 months behind reality. And it was during that time, the only kind of data we managed to find useful is when we started developing edge performance data. So we're talking about software that runs on an app or a little box, Raspberry Pi, or something that's plugged into the customer's network. And you send these test streams through the internet and you analyze it, and you can basically see all of the problems without asking anyone's permission, because there's a lot of cover-ups going on, especially when the KPIs are tied to the CEO's bonus structure. It's amazing how those faults disappears, and the regulators as well. So we really realized that when we're going from country to country, provider to providers, like all of these basics are just wrong, and the whole way of it, all of these silos and the way it's segmented, and so many different organizations responsible for making sure you actually have good internet quality in your house, around the world, was just crazy. And so we started to plan, we need to get these boxes around the world. How are we going to get that? How are we going to fund it? How are we going to coordinate it? And, the kind of answer was to create a tokenized incentives model. But this was 2017, long before DePIN and things. And internet quality was not really that hot topic, so it was kind of it was during COVID, really, when we started to focus on this full time, because suddenly everyone realizes the internet is not good everywhere. You suddenly have all of this renewed focus from providers, multinational organizations, governments trying to fund better networks. And, we were sitting there with this blueprint of building this intelligence network powered by, what you would call DePIN now. So we kind of started to put the plan together, kind of building a bit in the background over the bull market, the bear market, and then just found the right early investors and partners and started to kind of build things out. And we just kind of got to the point where we launched our first mobile version of the DePIN node on Android a couple of months ago, about to launch the iPhone version, and then we're going to go to a node sale in the next kind of couple of months. And we already have data coming in from 150 countries and over 3,000 providers and 45,000 survey responses, giving us that really detailed insights of performance, sentiment, and everything. So it's and we just kind of come off the back of Barcelona Mobile World Congress, where we had a booth there and talking to regulator clients, governments, and telcos, and hopefully very close to getting those first kind of revenue now that the data's flowing.
Yeah, I was at that event, I think I was at a more crypto-centric part of that event, and they were running alongside each other in that event center in Barcelona, maybe 6 years ago or something like that. It was just a zoo. There was the size of the venue center and the amount of people there, the amount of exhibitors. It was just.
So it was about 4 or 5 kilometers long. We kind of put it timed on our watch and stuff, and it's everyone is there and the money and stuff. And, all of the big tier 1 carriers and everything, everyone's kind of talking about AI and stuff, but they don't really mention too much about internet quality. And, when you look at what we're trying to do with DePIN, and we're completely reliant on the quality of that connection in people's homes or wherever, we often say, if you've got a spare gigabit broadband, get paid for it. But like those telecom providers, they don't provision 1 gig broadband. They only guarantee about 256 kilobits per second. So if everyone starts piping DePIN and stuff, so it's a really interesting kind of dynamic that's happening. Is we're putting more and more traffic to the edge, and the telecom providers need to be held accountable and improve things.
Cool. So is that the mission? Is to hold telecom providers accountable for their shitty internet, or?
Yeah, we kind of look at it as everyone everywhere should have access to high quality internet, and
Agreed.
That isn't defined by like a high speed test. That means like wherever anyone is on the planet, they can communicate without packet loss, with low latency and data quality, so they can do all of these things like e-commerce and education and things like that. So that's kind of the specification that all of these governments are talking about, but they don't think of it in engineering terms of how to make it happen and how that funding needs to be invested, like the last mile infrastructure, the interconnect, the submarine cables, more data centers. But I mean, this is also something that is an opportunity for DePIN, because we can actually take up a lot of that slack rather than having to build huge data centers in every country, you know. And it's just kind of, that's one of the things we find really interesting, is how we build this intelligence layer that everyone uses, like a single source of truth for consumers, businesses, DePIN, everyone, to make sure we can diagnose issues in real time, save you allocating engineering resources, saves your customers complaining. And it means you can optimize it in real time, but also you invest where it's needed. And, you know, it's got that kind of transparency across the board.
So, I mean, I can see why, you know, DePIN would love what you're doing, and I can see why governments would probably find it very valuable, and definitely users would. Is the goal to sell to telcos? Because I'd imagine there'd be telcos who
I mean, there's
shitty internet being exposed to the world.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. So that, I mean, the data set is the same depending on who looks there. You're just looking at it a slightly different way. If you're a consumer, it's like, I'm in this area, which is the best SIM card to use, which is the best broadband provider. I'm going on a business conference in Bangkok, which hotel's got the best internet. But behind that, the telcos and stuff is like, you know, when we detect issues in the network, they want to know instantly. And the regulators want to know, you know, of all of these telcos, I'm trying to get a grasp on which one's performing and breaking the law and all this kind of stuff. So we're targeting all of them equally, but because we come from the telecoms world, we've obviously got a lot of relationships with regulators. And, you know, we wrote the quality of experience framework for ASEAN, which kind of touched on all of this stuff. And we've done already audits with telcos, mobile operators, and that around the world. So we're trying to target them. But we basically turned something that would have been like a $500,000 audit into like an always-on data feed for a fraction of the cost. So, you know, they don't have those outlines. You don't have to do expensive drive tests. We don't have to install expensive probe equipment and anything in the provider's network, because that's the access that the DePIN gives us. If you run our node, we can get all of that detailed audit into information about your provider, see everything they're doing right, wrong in real time, way more than they can even do. And that's something we would have to put a lot of effort in on these consultancy projects and to pay a lot of money. But it's that same value is now scalable, so we can help them all out. And it's not to hit them hard. It's actually to go there. We found this problem. This is what you need to do, and just try and help uplift the entire internet for everyone.
Brilliant. And that's like going to only be available. You have apps, but they're mobile apps at the moment. Is that right? So, which makes sense because telco.
The Android app is on the go now. So we can't, as you can imagine, with the kind of the mobile app, people are moving around. We're trying to do some gamification, surveys, points and stuff, and it's providing data in the background. And you know, when people go around to public Wi-Fi locations, hotels and restaurants, coffee shops, and they're kind of providing this data, we're basically creating that map where people can get better connected wherever they are as well, just to help them people make better choices to make their life easier.
Like an internet quality oracle, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I just put Starlink. I bought a house literally in the middle of nowhere, so we're ready for the zombie apocalypse. But I got Starlink because I wasn't really sure what the local. Actually, everybody was telling me the local internet's fine. But I got Starlink. Do you have any data or thoughts on that, on their network?
Yeah, we've got some. I mean, of the like 3,000 providers we've got some Starlink data from about 5 or 6 countries coming in. I mean, we've just kind of been focused on our wait list. You know, we're just about to come out of beta on the full Play Store. And then, you know, we've been really holding back for the iPhone app before we push on the market. But like Starlink gives you that instant connection, you know, when you've got not a lot, but it's obviously no comparison against fiber, you know. So, and it will be interesting to see how the uptime is, how it changes as more users get connected to it and things like that. And
I think that's the key, because the fiber connections, in our area are terrible. And I think even though like we kind of live in the middle of nowhere, I just don't think there's that much fiber in the ground, basically. So like, I don't know. The connection quality from Starlink has been great, but I think it's mostly because, and when I say great, like, I mean, I think we get 160 Mbps or something like that. So it's good enough for everything that I do at work. But yeah, if there was suddenly loads of people also using Starlink and they were tying up the satellites, maybe, I don't know, maybe it would be less nice.
Yeah, but I mean, it's billions of dollars of investment needed to hit those rural areas. You know, like, I mean, in Ireland, you know, I did some work as a consultant with them during the rural program with MBI, and it was a €3 billion project that they essentially loaned to the company, and then they clawed back over a number of years. But you know, these programs is what's needed to cover it. But then you've seen these kind of Web3 alternatives like World Mobile, which is doing the DePIN model to get these kind of connectivity, because a lot of the time it's driven because just how slow governments are and the incumbent operators to actually connect people. So the people, you know, it's just like DePIN, we need to find ways around them, but then we still need them. So, you know, hopefully kind of Qualu can help to rein them all in and also support both sides of it.
Amazing. Yeah, really, really interesting. I'm keen to learn more about what you guys are doing, so I'll definitely have to do my bit of homework after. This is the great thing about this show. I love doing this because I get to meet so far anyway, every week it's been really interesting people and with really, really interesting projects that are, you know, that potentially have the chops to change the world, let's say, like, not to sound dramatic about it, but to change the way that we do things, which is really exciting. Cameron, I suppose same question to you. What's your backstory and what are you doing with DeFi?
Yeah, thank you. My backstory, I started in traditional finance and then met my co-founders at ETH Denver last year. So they had already been deep in the space, and, you know, I was deep in the space, but as a hobby, sort of as an enthusiast. Now they had co-founded the Follow Network. That was a very big TEE network. It was launched last cycle. It was one of the biggest projects on Polkadot, and they had about 50,000 nodes at the peak. So this was really, you know, one of those like early DePINs before DePIN, the term, even existed. These guys have, you know, an enormous amount of hardware experience. That's their bread and butter. That's what they love. And after leaving Fala, you know, they sat around thinking about sort of DePIN in general and what the hardest problems of building DePIN networks were. So all of us were very excited about, you know, DePIN as a sector. They loved the hardware. We all loved the real world impacts of it. We all loved sort of the community empowerment that comes along with DePIN. But as I'm sure everybody on the stage knows, it's very difficult, especially creating, you know, a physical DePIN network. It's very, very difficult. So DeFi's aim was to make developing and scaling DePIN applications super, super easy. The first problem that we had to tackle was sort of the development and the manufacturing problem. You know, having to develop hardware in general is obviously an extremely hard process. It's a time-consuming process. Luckily, between our CEO, CTO, and COO, they have decades of experience of hardware engineering between them, so we can very easily develop sort of online hardware models. And we've done that for projects like Star Power, building out their Gen 1 device, as well as D-Charge, building out their latest EV charging device. The next step is manufacturing. You know, most of this is coming from Shenzhen, China. We're fortunate enough to have our own factory in Shenzhen. So that develops our own DeFi nodes. That's also where we're developing and assembling, for example, like D-Charge's EV charging device. But at this point, you know, that's sort of the first stage, and it's something that early stage builders are facing. It's the hardware issue and the manufacturing issue. The next issue that we're tackling is the connectivity issue, specifically, you know, connecting the data and that network on chain. Most DePINs aren't using, you know, for example, they're not pushing a lot of data to Solana, and that's really because you know, it's too expensive and it's too slow to handle the real-time data needs that these networks need. So we developed a piece of software, a decentralized messaging layer to essentially connect those real world devices to Solana. Now we did a very first proof of concept for the first time in ETH Denver this year with D-Charge. So we took one of their EV charging devices. We won, showed proof of concept of that device. We were super excited to charge. We actually used a Cybertruck to charge a Model Y using that device. Now at that point, though, it's just a normal charger, similar to any Tesla charging station. So then using DeFi's message layer, we were able to push that charging data on chain. So things like, when did the session start? How long was it? When did it end? How much kilowatt hours of charge was transferred? And all of this is important because we want to make it very easy for DePIN networks to prove uptime, to prove rewards on chain. And how we think of it is if you run an EV charger, I run an EV charger, or maybe, we're all running Helium nodes, for example. Why did you earn 1 token a day? I earned 5, Daniel earned 10. Well, the best way to prove that is to have all the uptime data live on chain. And then we can sort of point to it and say, oh, Neil had, 1 minute of uptime, Daniel had 10, Cam had 5, for example. So we're really excited about that. We're talking to a number of projects to implement it. And then the third problem we're tackling is sort of the scaling issue. And again, it's really geared towards these physical DePIN networks. At this point in time, I think most people in crypto, at least, they at least know of DePIN. They're excited about its real world impacts. But there's still quite a barrier to entry to actually running devices yourself. There's multiple problems that come with it. They're expensive to operate. It takes some technical knowledge oftentimes to run them. And finally, too, you have to have, in the case of Helium, Hivemapper, etc., you have to have really good places to deploy them. So our solution there is to make it really easy for individuals to tokenize their own devices. And we create mining pools with those tokenized devices. And at this point, anybody, whether you're a big liquid fund or whether you're just an individual, can invest any amount of money into that pool backed by the stream of mining rewards. And we're doing that with Huma Finance. We'll provide sort of the liquidity to get those pools started. Huma, as you guys probably know, is one of the biggest on-chain creditors on Solana. They're really excited to partner with us as sort of a verification layer. So Huma, they can't write like normal loans, for example, to D-Charge because it would make them no different than, normal, like, for example, getting a small business loan for JP Morgan Chase down the street. So they need all the data verifiable on chain, the uptime verified on chain, and the rewards need to immediately go to repay that loan. So we're really excited to get started actually using D-Charge as the first proof of concept there as well. But that's really the 3 verticals of DeFi, and we using DeFi's solutions, we make building and scaling these DePIN networks super, super easy.
Did Cam just drop out for everybody else, or was it just me?
Oh, sorry. Can you guys still hear me?
I can hear you again now. Yeah, that's great.
Yep. Now I heard him all the way to the end. He's good.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
So yeah, just to unpack that a little bit, just to take the last example that you were giving us there about D-Charge and the lending protocol. Could you walk us through a little bit, or walk me through a little bit how that actually works for the uninitiated, let's say, that are tuned in?
Absolutely.
So my understanding of lending protocols so far is that essentially you're borrowing against assets that you like, so at a slight discount, but it's over collateralized. How would a messaging layer? Is it the messaging layer piece, or is it entirely different?
Yeah. So it's an entirely different build. It uses the message layer for verification. So the message layer comes in to verify that, for example, with the case of D-Charge, that's a perfect first use case because it's spinning off, cash revenues from the charging sessions. It's also spinning off token rewards. So when you think of underwriting these loans, DePIN obviously comes to mind because of their cash flows. The trouble is underwriting, a token-based reward system that obviously the token can fluctuate, rewards can fluctuate. So Decharge was a very good first proof of concept here because of those cash revenues, which are a little bit more steady. It will use the message layer to verify every single charge session on chain. That allows the lender like Huma Finance to have a lot of credibility in knowing that those charge sessions happened and that they're getting paid the fair amount. And the way we've set it up with them is to repay that loan as soon as possible. So we actually hold their loan in a separate pool. And then every dollar of charge that comes in, we release $1 of that loan back to the Decharge guys until the loan is fully repaid and the full amount is released.
So in that example, it will be Decharge taking a loan essentially from Huma Finance, or it would be a third person, like say, for example, me taking a loan from Huma Finance and then somehow repaying it with my Decharge. I think I'm missing a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, for the first proof of concept, and it probably helps, Decharge has two different tiers of devices. So they have like an everyday device that anybody can use, anybody could deploy, and it's a commercial device. But then they have a very large, they call it the Vault Box. So they're deploying those right now, and they deploy them on the side of highways. The reason that caught ours and Huma's attention was because, again, of the cash rewards component to it. So there's like 6 chargers in here. There's also a cafe. There's also billboards on the side. It spins off a lot of cash flow. So right now we're doing it with Decharge, and Decharge is the one taking out the loan. Decharge is the one managing the deployments of those Vault boxes. But in the future, surely we want to make it so, for example, Neil, you could tokenize your own device and rip out some liquidity up front, and then you would essentially give a piece of those mining rewards to somebody else in perpetuity.
Okay, gotcha. So in the case of Decharge, they just want to build more stations. They need a bunch of cash up front, and then it gets paid back through the cash that's spinning off.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha now. Interesting, very interesting. Right, and I suppose DeFi's role in that is that you're essentially making sure that everything is properly documented on the blockchain, so it's immutable essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Think of DeFi as that third party verification layer for Huma.
Right. Cool. All right. Awesome. Very good. So you guys are relatively like at a relatively young stage of development. Would that be fair to say? Because you said you only started.
We absolutely are. Yeah. Especially compared to Daniel and Keith on stage here. We absolutely are. So we've started working on DeFi about 18 months ago. I joined the team back in ETH Denver of last year, and we've been working together, the 4 co-founders, ever since. We're a team of about 12 right now.
Awesome. And are you guys going to launch a token?
We will launch a token. We will launch a token, yeah.
Awesome. I suppose the same question goes to everybody else. Daniel, did you guys have a stable coin at one stage, or is that a different project also called Flux?
No, we have ZUSD. We have a stable coin. So we built it for a lot of different reasons. It's going to start being utilized now, but essentially, when you're building in this technology stack, you quickly realize you're going to need components that don't exist in Web 2. And, our own stable asset was a good add to that. We have a product called Zelcore. We actually have 3 wallets. We have Zelcore SSP, which is groundbreaking. Ethereum couldn't build it with Snore signatures. We did. So we have SSP with the real 2-factor authentication for, you utilize your phone plus your computer to, do your transactions and so on and so forth. And then we have Echo Wallet, which is another product that we have. All of these needed. Fairly the same things. It's kind of hard to say you're decentralized if you're using 2-factor authentication from Google. So we had to create decentralized 2-factor authentication. We had to create a stable asset. We had to create all the things that you're really using in Web 2 in Web 3 because they don't necessarily transition seamlessly.
Yeah, that reminds me of a bunch of things I've seen when Elon Musk is interviewed, and he's like, well, we didn't have there wasn't a good version of that, so we had to build it. Like they're just trying to build an electric car, but they had to start an insurance company, and they had to put in new charging tech because it just wasn't able to charge quick enough. And so yeah, it sounds a bit like that.
That's really why there's so many components to Flux. You got Flux Edge, Flux Core, Flux OS, Arcane. You got all these pieces because for us to rebuild them, we had to rethink how it was being utilized. Because essentially in centralized technology, super easy, you just stand it up, run it on infrastructure. But for us, we had to think, how does that work with a decentralized network? And it isn't just a lift and shift. It's really a recreation of everything from top to bottom. So it takes time to build a better mousetrap.
Yep. I came across Flux a while back. I think around the time that the decentralized stablecoin, is it an algorithmic stablecoin, or there's something about it that's not just the same as
it's essentially a 1-for-1. It's kind of an algorithmic stablecoin. Yes. Think of what was it, Terra, that took a crap with her TUSD or whatever it was.
Yep.
Essentially the same kind of concept, but built like as a 1-to-1 pairing. So we're not controlling, what's going up and down. Essentially, it's doing it itself.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember I was working with a project at the time. I won't name names, but I remember we were all very interested in Flux because it was really cool that from an architecture point of view, some of the guys were really geeking out in terms of the way that it was. Yeah, the way that was.
You got to be a nerd to really appreciate it, dude.
I definitely would categorize myself as a nerd, but I don't think I'm enough of a nerd to fully appreciate that. Like I did actually sit down and read the Satoshi white paper back in 2017 when I started working full time in the space, just because I thought, well, I really need to understand. Like I love technology, I love new things, that are changing the way stuff works, but I just really didn't understand it. So I was like, right, that's it. I'm locking the doors to the apartment. I'm going to sit here with the dictionary if that's what it takes. And I did take that actually. But it was such a good exercise. I really would recommend everybody do that. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you're orange pilled, it's over, man. Like, exactly. I remember the day that I found the white paper. I remember the day that I learned about Bitcoin, and the rest is history, man. Like I was like, yeah, I'm going to make I spent 20 years in the C-suite, basically centralizing everything as a CIO. And now I'm going to spend the rest of my life tearing it all apart. You know what I mean? Like, it's so crazy. But once you really see the power, and by the way, the only thing that has got to me like Bitcoin is DePIN. That's the only thing, because what's the number one question that everybody asks you when you say you work in blockchain? What's it do? What's it do? And then you got to come up with some kind of crazy ass description about it. With Flux, it's what's it do? Everything you do in standard infrastructure today, you can do it on Flux. And I mean, it really starts to prove that these projects who have thought about development, like real development, revenue generation, strategic planning, I heard Cameron say about, they have people that are working with them from a business side of it. That's very forward thinking, because that's one thing we're lacking sorely right now in blockchain is the average age is about 26 years old. I'm 50. I'm like the OG, right? But I came from a business world where I can take those business skills and I can roll them into Web3. I just have to change my perception of how I'm doing it. And now all of a sudden, blockchain becomes like the solution for major places. A perfect example is FluxMed, which we recently developed, which basically allows you EMR also integrates with our AI solution for scans and so on and so forth. It's a no-brainer. The financial sector didn't want Bitcoin. It was a problem. It was a solution for a problem they didn't want to fix, right?
Yeah.
That's not the same with everything else. Healthcare, supply chain management, you name it. They're looking for solutions. And, that white paper was a beta. We put it out on LinkedIn and X just for shits and giggles. The next thing you know, I've got 30 people in my inbox saying, how do we use this thing? So, the DePIN is actually the solution that blockchain was built for, right? It just is, because without it, the rest of what we're building means nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would agree with that to a certain extent. I think there's definitely an argument for, I mean, just banks and, you know, the speed at which you can transfer money. Like if I tried to move, for example, and I know this is different in every country. I think in the States, you guys are a bit faster than us, and the EU are trying to catch up with that. But like if I transfer money from one of my bank accounts in Ireland to a different banking institution in Ireland, I have to wait more than 24 hours for that to happen.
Try weeks in the States. Our SWIFT payments system is anything but SWIFT,
So
right?
exactly.
It's
So
ridiculous.
So yeah, so stable coins and things like that can transact instantly without any third party, oversight or permission. You know, like if you try to withdraw money over a certain amount, and again, this is an Irish example, but if you try to withdraw, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. If you try to withdraw an amount of money over a certain amount, they will quiz you about what it's for. It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
Look at business. That's what it's for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you're starting to finally see people wake up to that and say, look, them controlling us financially means they're control us implicitly, right? So, people are starting to get, and by the way, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I think you need to have different components to make this entire decentralized thing work. But let's let the people worry about finance that are worrying about finance. Let's worry about the infrastructure, because if a stable asset is running centralized, right? And it is. Most of the stable assets, USD, USDT, whatever, they have a centralized component to it. If they start to build their infrastructure on something like DePIN, now we're talking Turkey, right? Now it's kind of more uncensorable. It's easier to move. There's very low restrictions. You look at what happened in the EU and their restriction with USDT, you're going to see that grow exponentially over the next several years. They're going to try to regulate it out of existence. And we need to keep building DePIN to be able to provide an infrastructure for those projects to run on, so they're not interrupted by, bullshit politics, right? We govern in code, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, 100%. I think decentralization is actually probably just crucial for humanity. I mean, I've thought that since I was orange pilled, as you called it, because money is everything. But when it comes to assets and real world assets, DePIN, the networks of the future, I think all of that is going to be, I think it's a mistake to underestimate how important that is, the decentralization layer, and how having something that really works and is an actual competitor to a centralized alternative. Because that's the other thing, right? Like the centralized, like there are advantages to having things centralized, but yeah, too centralized is not good. And I think the only real antidote to that is us all building these DePIN networks that are, actually competitive, that can actually do as good a job as the 5 major players in the space. Let's call them centralized players in the space. Keith, what do you think about that decentralization, generally speaking? And I mean, obviously, that's a big part of what you're doing, it sounds like. So what do you think about decentralization versus centralization in terms of competitiveness, and also, I suppose, where we're going with?
I think you need that choice, right? And that's where we always see as well even in the telecoms world, where you have those big incumbent operators, no competition, and it's a lot of them are kind of tired of government. Everything's slow, and everyone kind of gets left behind, and that's like everyone's moving to this, global connected humanity, where no matter where you are, you're connected, and things. And the decentralization is important, because you can't, the people of the world aren't centralized, so if you have big data centers in like Hong Kong, Singapore, and London and Europe and stuff like that, when you're actually in these rural areas, you're miles away. The latency is really high. You can't get good quality, and the amount of links and routes you need to get there, a lot of them are congested, is a problem, so you need to align the infrastructure with where the people are, which is great, which is DePIN and stuff like that. And then the other thing is that what we found is there was absolutely no accountability for the internet. and we're building our entire life where it relies on the internet. And if you're not connected to it, you can't participate in this like new version of humanity where everyone's connected. And, there's anybody could be a service provider connect. There's no real, the regulations were very weak and stuff like that. And any kind of existing monitoring solutions were aligned with just the ISP, which is just a little tiny bit in the middle, and 10,000s of them around the world, and just cogs in the machine. Nothing really aligned with the entire planet, and nothing aligned with the needs of the people. So you had all these ulterior motives and stuff like that. And a lot of the monitoring companies are actually bought up by the likes of Cisco, who also sell equipment to telecom providers. So they're not going to hold them accountable and put out that they're not doing. So there's, so we really wanted to make this like for the people, and they can obviously run the node, support it, and we kind of call them guardians of the internet, right? And you can run a node, you can actually earn rewards and get paid for that, while also helping yourself get better internet and helping everybody else get better internet and stuff. And that is a big part of the decentralization and the choice, and trying to help more people get involved with what we're trying to do right across the board.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that resonates with me as well, because it's kind of part of our mission at Havelo as well, is to try and just bring a lot more people into crypto, not even into crypto per se, but into I suppose essentially becoming nodes in the decentralized network of humanity. We're very much targeting anybody who has a computer that's not using it, all of its resources 24 hours a day. So, very much a retail user with any sort of a desktop machine.
And that's going to keep the cost down and the choice. I mean, if you think of everything going like with the AI and the compute, and even pushing out like AAA gaming to the rural people. So like, you just need a cheap phone now to play AAA games, because you can tap into this deep, and you don't need a PlayStation 5 and stuff like that. And you can access all education and things. So it is really helping to address a lot of the gaps that these institutions have left behind. I mean, like you always say, they're for profit, they've got shareholders. It's not in their best interest to go out and cable every village or get them connected and stuff like that. And
right.
We have to kind of hold them accountable in a way. And so, I mean, sometimes it's actually a lot cheaper than they realize. It's just that mindset of like, we're gonna, to spend it this way. And then what we also see is the wastage and how inefficient all of these telcos are. It's just most of their OPEX is wasted because they don't have a clue where these issues are. They're not optimizing it, not investing wisely. So when you actually see big improvements there, you can actually lower the cost down for everybody, and then we can, get better connected, especially with the edge networks as well. We're still kind of reliant a bit on these telcos and incumbents to plug into.
Right. Getting close to the hour, Cameron. Just the last check from yourself. How do you see DeFi in terms of, I suppose, helping humanity move towards a more decentralized existence? Is that something that's important to you guys? Is it something that you think about when you're planning what you're going to build next and that kind of thing, or how does it factor into the equation for you guys?
It absolutely is important. It's important from an ethos standpoint. That's why all of us got into crypto to begin with. This decentralized future, permissionless future. But of course, as it relates to DePIN, it's super important, and it's been touched on already. But what's so exciting about DePIN is sort of the community empowerment, where you can have you can empower people to essentially become mini entrepreneurs. Maybe they're selling unused bandwidth, or they're deploying hotspots, or they're deploying EV chargers, or they're monetizing data that they were already doing these actions. They just weren't able to monetize it. And I think there's a lot to say about sort of those additional revenue streams really impacting people's lives. So DeFi absolutely cares about decentralization. We have a decentralized network of nodes powering our messaging layer. And as mentioned, our aim is to make it very easy for these entrepreneurs to spin up their own DePIN networks. It's very hard to do so right now, and these entrepreneurs should be able to focus on sort of the business side of that network. That's really where we come in.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, that's great, guys. Thank you so much for all your time and thoughts today. It's been a very interesting conversation. I am here, obviously, as one of the core team of Havelo. If any of our listeners have a machine that's not being used 24/7, by all means, download our app. It's free. You can rent out your resources through a very simple, easier to install than Spotify application. So just pop that on your machine and you'll get some mining rewards. We're still in beta, so it's very early days. But yeah, our goal is to aggregate all of DePIN and make sure that everybody's able to get the best rewards possible from whatever resources they have that are spare. So that's the idea of Havelo. A final shout out from everybody. Is there any final closing words you'd like to say, Daniel, then Keith, then Cam, about anything?
The only thing I would say is get involved in DePIN, fall down the rabbit hole, right? I mean, this is the future where blockchain is going holistically. Get involved in it. 50% of our enterprise customers or greater, they ask, do I need a blockchain? And the answer is resounding no, you don't need a blockchain. You need a project that's built that infrastructure. So, and if you're deploying a DePIN project, look at Flux. If your nodes are running on AWS or Google or Microsoft or DigitalOcean or whatever it is, you're not truly decentralized. So really what we're trying to do is challenge people when they're initiating their projects, they're building their projects, they're on that discovery level to be able to utilize decentralization at your heart. So, don't reinvent the wheel because Web 2.5 doesn't work. Web 3 is the way to go. So, and that really the foundational model of that is DePIN. So check us out online, runonflux.com. You can visit us in our Discord. If you want to follow us on X, it's at runonflux. And yeah, just come ask questions because that's what we're here for.
Awesome. Keith, do you want to share your links? And
I just say, like the world that we're all building on and connecting to and relying on, it's massively important that we get good connection wherever you are. And, that's why the Qualu mission is so important. And, it'd be great if you could come and follow our socials. We're at Qualu_network on X. You can go to qualu.io and download the app from there. If you've got Android now and iOS soon, that data when you're running those nodes, and it's really important because that helps us see exactly all the issues in your country, in your area, and we're holding everyone accountable. So we'll be speaking to every country, every regulator, every provider, and let us help you pretty much. And in that we will take ownership and be the guardians of the internet. So let's make the internet better together. And so qualu.io, and you'll find everything there.
Awesome, thank you, Keith. Cam?
Hey Neil, thanks so much for hosting this. Daniel and Keith, I really enjoyed the conversation. Anybody listening here who's interested in possibly building their own network, please do reach out. We'll help get you off the ground, get you from 0 to 1. And for bigger projects out there as well who are interested in pushing some data onto the Solana blockchain, please do reach out. We'd love to get you going there. And for everybody listening, you can follow us more at DeFi Network on X, or find out some more information at defi.io. But we have a huge month ahead of us, so stay tuned.
Awesome, thanks, me and Cam. And for myself, you can find us on havelo.com and at Havelo Official on X. So I guess that brings us to a close. Thank you, gents, for your time. For your thoughts and for your insights. It's been a great chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And for everybody else, next time, see you next week.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks.